Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and anybody else who's listening or watching. Long time since I've said that, isn't it? To remind you who I am. My name's Lee G. Banks, and I actually am a professional writer. Through that, I've also been a broadcaster. I'm making a couple of television documentaries at the moment, and I've done quite well over the past few decades. I'm not really saying how long. The reason I'm telling you that is not because I'm bragging. It's because, well, there's two reasons. One is my youngest daughter, Jessica, has decided that she would like to become a writer. And the other reason is on my site, the Lee G. Banks Preservation Society .blog. A lot of people have been asking me, how do you actually make a living out of being a writer? And all I've got to say, it ain't easy. But once you catch on, once you start producing what publishers want, and I'm talking about various publishers, various kinds of publishers, not one type of publisher, various kinds of publishers, then it's not that you get on easy street, but you can start to make a living. Now, my career as a writer has taken me across continents. I've travelled the world because I've been to America, I've been to Africa, I've been to India, I've been to Australia. Basically, I've been all around the world, boys, girls. And it's been fabulous. I now live out in Central Europe, and the idea is soon to move back to Spain. It's just a place that we really enjoy, like we enjoy Central Europe. Now, I've got to explain another thing, which is why I am actually doing this. If you look, that's my arm, that's my left arm, and that, I'm going to put it down now, is my writing arm. I'm left-handed. Now, a lot of people say that means that you're very artistic. I think that's a bit of a fallacy. Plenty of right-handed writers, me dears, I tell you. But I fell off a horse and I've done my arm in. This one. So, it's not broken or anything. Don't have apoplexy. Well, most of you probably aren't. But it's just like impossible to do any writing. So I thought I'd return to doing a bit of broadcasting. The second reason I'm doing this is because Jessica, that's my youngest daughter who wants to be a writer, and me, at the end of this month, are going to be doing a webinar. We've been asked by quite a lot of people if they could join in. I'm talking actually like a lot of people. And so we're asking all these people to send in questions about being a writer. So here we go then. Let's talk about being a writer for a few minutes. My career began on a very small newspaper in the north of England. It was called the Ashton Underline Reporter. Probably nobody's ever heard of it. Maybe some of you have. In fact, there's some friends of mine who might be watching this who began there too. It was the type of newspaper where the Second World War was actually announced in a little, what was called slug boxes at the bottom of the back page. That's how in touch with the news they were. It was a local newspaper. Like the war, it didn't happen in Ashton Underline, so they just give it one line, war declared on Britain, or wherever it was declared on, whoever declared it. I wasn't there, you see. And that was the kind of newspaper it was. I then moved on to the Gordon and Openshaw Reporter and the East Manchester Reporter. From there I went to the Chester Chronicle, then to the Bolton Evening News, the Manchester Evening News, and eventually the hallowed grounds of the thing that everybody who's watching this will now have, actually will have apoplexy about, the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Daily Star and the Sunday Express. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and anybody else, I became a national newspaper reporter. Now, there were two reasons for that. One was I needed to make a living. I just needed to make a living. That's what people do. And the way to make a living, the basic way to make a living, and it's not as easy as it was then, so I'm going back a long time, and you could, I was just lucky, I was 26 and I was on the Fleet Street of Manchester. It doesn't exist anymore, and Fleet Street's not really hiring and firing the way it did. But it was the idea of working for a newspaper for the equivalent to a salary today of maybe 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a year. Now there you're earning money, and you're earning money as a writer. And believe me, the world of newspapers and magazines teaches you to write. It teaches you about stories. You know, forget about the politics of newspapers, forget about the fact that everybody in the world hates newspapers. Forget about my views on newspapers. Forget about my defense of newspapers. Let's just look at what newspapers do, because it's very pertinent to the rest of the writing world. First of all, you have somebody like me, a writer, who writes a story, does the best, researches it, writes it in the best florid terms that he can or she can, and submits it to a news desk, who then actually go through it, rewrite it a little bit, come up with different ideas, maybe get you to ask more questions on the subject, make you look at perhaps the story in a different way. Then it goes to sub-editors. Now, the sub-editor is the person who makes the story flow, makes it happen, makes it become something that people want to read. He writes the headlines, he basically has the final decision on pictures, although you have a picture editor who does that. So if you look at that construction, first of all, you have a writer, me. Then you have somebody who looks at that book, publisher, right? It's a news desk, but it's, just take that as the publisher. He looks at it and says, yeah, I'd like to publish this. So then they have a tinker with it. And it then goes to the editors, who have a further tinker with it. Now, the tinkering with your book is there to make it more saleable and make it more readable. Make it something that's interesting to the general public. So then you choose a picture, which actually, if you think about it, is like the front page of your book. It's like the cover picture. Now, you have experts who do that, people who are trained to do it, who know how to present through pictures. They edit pictures. I'm a good picture editor. I'm a terrible photographer, but I'm a really good picture editor because I've been doing it for so long. And I'm also a very good sub-editor and editor. Actually, my career has spanned a lot. And so then your book goes to market in the best possible form it can. Just like your newspaper story has gone to market in the best possible form that it can. Now, the next stage of getting your book to the public is publicity. Giving it a profile. Now, in a newspaper, you do that through adverts, you do it on television adverts, although newspapers don't really advertise on television very much. But you do it through billboards. Take the billboards as Facebook. Take the TV advertising, doing something like I'm doing now. This is basically TV. And so you tell the world about your news story or your book. Then people buy it or don't. Now, if they don't buy it, you don't make any money. In a newspaper or a magazine, you're fairly well protected because you won't get sacked until a lot of your stories have failed to cause any great interest. But if your book fails, then what do you actually do? Plenty of authors have seen their books end up in Waterstones, whatever they're called, the racks were discontinued, put out cheaply on different places, as seen on Amazon, reduced from £20 down to a fiver, £3, £2.99. It's heartbreaking. It's never happened to me because I've never been in that position, but it's heartbreaking. Now that leads me on to the next stage, which the webinar is going to be about. A lot of the webinar is going to be about it anyway, and that's self-publishing. Now, if you watch programs like, now this is only for the people in the UK basically, but I know it goes elsewhere. Just take The Chase, for instance. It's a show, it's a quiz show, asks fairly banal questions and has fairly banal humour in it, and 4 people have to go up against a chaser and try and win loads and loads and loads of money. Now, invariably, probably 3-4 times a week, there is somebody within the guest list, usually with a big, don't do that when you hurt your arm, with a big flowery Hawaiian shirt on and perhaps an earring. And when they are asked, what do you do for a living? They say, I'm a writer. And I look at it and think, well, are you really a writer or are you a self-publisher? Have you done an ebook? Now, before you all switch off and go up the wall, there's nothing wrong with ebooks. In fact, I'm going to do 2 ebooks fairly soon. But is that really the way to sell your book? A lot of people say, yeah. But does it actually lower the standard of the world's literature? Now, there are some good writers out there who know exactly what they're doing. They know how to edit a book. They know how to use the cover of a book to sell it. They know all the tricks of the trade. They know how to get the book to market. And they find it. Stephen King's one. The girl who wrote whatever it was, 50 Shades or 50 Shades of Grey. She did it somehow and became very, very well off for it. But what happens with your average person who just wants to write a book, they don't go through the editing process. They don't go through that intricate way of building up a book in the best way you possibly can. And I think that is what writing is about. It's like an artist who draws a line on a page or paints a line on a page, then starts to create something wonderful, something perfect out of that line. It's like an actor who gets a line in a script to say. And they work on that one line until they find the essence of the truth, of the honesty, of the meaning, of the emotion, of everything else that is actually in that line. And they give that line to the audience because it's perfect. And a writer's life is exactly the same. You think of a line for your book, for your article, for your blog, for whatever, for your ebook, and you spend time on it. You polish it, you make it shine, you make it tell its own story. A good writer can tell a good story in one line. And that's what writing is about. It's about creativity. It's about being an artist. An artist should be the best at what they do. And they should strive on a daily basis to do what they do and make it wonderful. Now, on that fairly controversial note, I'm sure people will, I'm going to go. But watch Facebook. Find me on Facebook or find me on my site, the Lee G. Banks Preservation Society. and drop me your drop me your questions about being a writer. And I promise, as Jessica and I talk about writing, that we will do our best to answer your questions, give you pointers, give you ideas of how to create a career for yourself in one of the most unforgiving careers that anybody has ever embarked on. The webinar will be at the end of September, and I suppose I better put unless you're listening to this next year, 2020, yes. Depending on all sorts of things that are going on, COVID, Brexit and everything, I can't see anything stopping us because both me and Jessica want to do it. And write to us, tell us, ask us what you want to know about writing. I promise I'll give you the answers that I have in the best possible way. We're also going to be talking about different types of books and different types of ways of approaching, and probably do some readings from various things. All right, well, if you have been, thank you for listening. If you haven't, you missed me. Bye-bye.